Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Easier Said Than Done podcast. I'm very excited today to have Jeremy on the show. Jeremy Parker is also one of the extraordinary people that we'd like to talk about on this show, to introduce you guys to. Why? Because he's been through a hard journey, just like anyone who succeeded. And it is fair to say that currently Jeremy occupies a pinnacle of success that most people would like to achieve in their life. I'm sure Jeremy will be the first one to tell you that that's not the way to go about your life, but we understand that that's what people want. They want the big names, right? So Jeremy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's awesome. It's a pleasure. Thanks again.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is mine. Now, you're based in California.
That's right. Yep, Southern California.
That's great. Excellent. So Saturday morning, my time, Friday afternoon, your time. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got family and kids and stuff, but why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us who you are, where you're working at the moment, what kind of engineering work you do. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So I actually saw one of your posts on LinkedIn talking about an episode of your podcast. And as a career changer myself, I was just so excited to see that you're out there supporting career changers. And you invited me on, which is awesome. I like talking, really like talking, and actually love talking to other people on LinkedIn who are in their career change journey. So it feels really good to be able to kind of give back, because when I was in my career change journey, I was all by myself and didn't bother to reach out to anybody, which was, looking back, quite a misstep on my part. But I'm a front-end software engineer. I've been a front-end engineer for about 5 years now professionally. I work for a FANG company. And
are you going to talk about which one? Are you going to be coy about that?
Yeah, I work for Apple.
There you go. See, he was being coy.
Welcome to Easier Said Than Done with me, Zubin Pratap, where I share with you the tens of thousands of dollars worth of self-development that I did on my journey from 37-year-old lawyer to professional software engineer. The goal of this podcast is to show you how to actually do those things that are easier said than done.
I work for Apple.
There you go. He was being coy. He was being modest. Yeah, keep going.
And yeah, actually, a little bit about my own career kind of change journey and the spark of it. I'd always been interested in software engineering, but throughout my life, I always just kind of convinced myself that I wasn't smart enough for it. Mm-hmm. Part of that comes from my struggles with math, and I for some reason I had in my mind programming equals math and logic skills. And it's something I struggled with throughout my life. I had teachers who told me, like, you're hopeless, just like the worst, that just really deeply ingrained this mindset that I don't have the ability to do things. Mm-hmm. So it was start, stop for a long time. I remember this was way back in the day when Rails was the big thing. A friend of mine told me, hey, you should learn Rails. It's easy. So I opened up a book. This was before a lot of the YouTube tutorials. I looked at the first page and just thought, nah, I'm not smart enough for this, and just kind of put it away. So I would just give up as soon as I'd start. The most basic concepts, I didn't even bother to kind of wrap my mind around.
No, I went through the same thing, Jeremy, with Android, right? Like when I wanted to start, I was like, I want to try and build an app. This is 2013, 2014, my first pass, right? And I was like, I'm going to try and learn to code. I'm going to be a coder. I'm going to build an app. Because remember, 2010, 11, 12, it was app heaven, right? Like everyone was launching the apps the first time you're going mobile. And I dived straight into the Android framework without realizing that a framework is a very high level of abstraction and very opinionated. I didn't know the basics of coding, but there was no one around to tell me that. And I had I made contact with Android, the framework, got a book. My nose got bloodied in day one. And I said, there is no way I'm smart enough for this, right?
Yeah, which is incredible for you to say as someone coming from the law background. You have a real knack for complicated things, but there is this mindset that software engineering is just for the smart people, and that's at least what I told myself. So it's amazing what we kind of convince ourselves at a subconscious level. Yeah,
very true. In the Inner Circle program, which I do with Brian, we don't even start the coding for 2 months. Like we don't start. We do a little bit of stuff here and there. We do a lot of baselining. We give them stuff to baseline, but we don't teach anything. And the reason for that is this. I have found that over years of coaching people that if you give them a plan and they're not ready for it, it doesn't matter how good the plan is.
Yep.
Does that ring a bell? Like, you get the right advice and the guidance, but you're not ready for it and can't execute on it because of the mental stuff.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Because, part of the hang up for me was not, and this is kind of ties back to my struggles with math, is that I needed a way to learn that kind of resonated with the way I think. And I would look at these tutorials and it'd be like, okay, here's how you do hello world. And then here's how you do like all these different things. And I couldn't connect it to something real world.
Hey, hope you're enjoying this episode. Listen, I bet you're tired of the social media BS, you're confused and overwhelmed, and all you want is for someone to just show you a clear path to a coding career, right? We get it. My partner Brian and I, we changed to code in our 30s, and we can help you do it too. Brian and I have done all sorts of engineering work from startups to Google, and now we've built an exclusive private mentorship program designed to get you from beginner to professional developer. Whether you've done a coding bootcamp, you have a computer science degree, or you're starting from zero, it doesn't matter. We'll build you a step-by-step and customized plan, not just for the coding stuff, but for the entire career change process. Look, I'll be honest, the program is not easy and it's not short. But if you do the work, you'll get results that will change your life, if that's what you want. So go to parsity.io/innercircle or find any of the links in the show notes, and you can schedule a free call with us. Speak to you then.
And I couldn't connect it to something real world. It was all these sort of conceptual things. And it wasn't until a little bit later, and this was sort of the spark that finally made me understand things, is seeing sort of like the visual and tactile response, like, okay, click a button and this thing happens.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I needed. I needed to be able to see something real, not just from a theoretical perspective, but like an applied perspective.
So true. You know, the number of people who come and say, oh, I did CS50 and it was great. And I'm like, CS50 is really great. I mean, I'm talking 7 years ago. I haven't done it recently. I know they've revamped it, but 7-8 years ago, CS50, I mean, he was an awesome teacher. It was free on YouTube. It was such great theory, but I couldn't build anything at the end of it. It was pure theory, and a lot of it I don't remember now. I mean, I'm sure I've sort of picked it up organically, right? So I was like, and that's the historical problem with education systems everywhere. Like, I did 5 years of law school, and I ended up using in the next 15 years of my career perhaps less than 15% of what I learned.
Yeah.
And what I did need, I had to pick up on the job through contact with the real world, right? And so your entire analysis around, you have to kind of build things and engage with and have the feedback, I guess, that interactive learning, which code is very good at giving you rapid feedback. It'll tell you right away if your code doesn't work, like immediately it'll tell you, no, not compiling,
Right.
So having that, why do you believe that kind of learning is so important?
I think it's because there's a lot of different ways of sort of understanding and learning. For me, I need, there's at least within sort of like I think the educational theory, there's visual, kinesthetic, and auditory learning. These different ways of kind of, getting information and kind of really getting it in your brain. And people have certain ways. They're more kinesthetic. Those are the more athletic people. And some people are more visual or auditory. For me, it had to be a combination of everything to really get it to click. So I needed to be able to have like the experience of doing something to get a response back.
Yeah.
And being able to know, okay, if I want to create a button or I want it to send a response to a backend or whatever, here's what I do. And then when I put that in and I saw it working in front of me, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I remember when things finally started to click for me, I remember going through some tutorials. These are some like Rails tutorials. And, conceptually, I still didn't really understand a lot of what was happening, but just being able to see that I could do these things just really motivated me.
Yeah.
At sort of like a deep level that I just didn't have before.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. I mean, I taught myself to play the guitar as well, like some 20 years ago. And it was the same thing. It is the tightness of the feedback loop that if you get the balance right, on a net basis, it's more motivating than demotivating. But you have to get that balance right. You have to be in that flow state where it's a little bit beyond your ability, but not so beyond your current ability. What you're trying to do is not so far ahead of your current ability that it's demoralizing you. But it's enough that it keeps you hooked, because the brain wants a nice meaty puzzle to chew on, but not so much that you just feel completely defeated by it, right? Same thing in music, same thing in coding, same thing with any skill, is to be just in that zone of discomfort that, we talk about in that book Flow. So here's, given that I think you were trying for like 3 or 4 years, you're obviously quite motivated. You've been wanting to do this for a long time. You'd finally overcome the limiting beliefs you had around math and logical thinking. How old were you at this point in time? Give us a sense of context here.
That's funny. It's the at a certain point you forget how old you were at certain times of your life.
Yeah.
I think I was my daughter was born, so I was 32, around 32, the 31,
Okay.
32.
Yeah, that's when you
Um,
started the 4-year journey, right?
yeah, yeah, and I think it kind of hit me in the face that I really need to make a change in my life. I had my daughter coming. I got this negative feedback at work, which I feel like it was a mistake. I don't know. I feel like I did pretty good that year, but I didn't really get much in terms of a raise or anything. And I was already, you
What were you
know,
doing
uh,
for work at this point, Jeremy?
I was at a consulting firm. I was doing learning and development, and I was also doing things like SharePoint and like all sorts of different stuff.
Gotcha.
So, I thought like I really need to figure out what to do with my life because not only am I struggling financially, my daughter's coming. In 10 years, am I still going to be doing this thing? Am I still going to
Right.
be creating these courses that I don't really feel any value from? Am I still going to be
Right.
working with these tools that I just don't really find interesting anymore?
Yeah.
And it was funny. I was putting together a training course with this tool. I wanted to make it more interesting because at the time we were just doing the most bland, at least I was, not very enjoyable courses. And I was looking through the settings. I thought, can I make this at least like gamify it or something? And I saw settings for JavaScript and CSS. I'm like, wait, I've seen those before. I remember like trying 10 or 20 times to figure out JavaScript. Maybe I can finally get it to work this time.
Yeah.
And somehow I guess it was just that confluence of all these different things in my life. Finally, that switch flipped in my head.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do. This is like motivating. I'm able to create things of value. I'm able to create unique things that genuinely impact people's lives. And
Yeah.
that just kind of like, I was off to the races. First problem though was student loan debt and the cost of a boot camp. At the time,
Yep.
boot camps are really expensive, like $10,000, $20,000, and even more than that, even more than 20,000. And it's thought, I don't have the money for this, but I know I have to do this. So I'm just going to go it alone.
Yeah.
It'll take a year. Well, then a year became 2 years,
Yeah.
and then COVID hit, and then like all these just like life, right?
Yes.
Working a full-time job and then taking care of your kids and family. My wife's a flight attendant, so she's away for weekends, and sometimes it's just me and the kids, so how do you carve out time for all that?
Oh my God. It's a big part of what we spend time on in the Inner Circle program is enabling your life circumstances. Like I said, it's not just enough to have the plan. You need to have the life circumstances that enable you. So true. So true.
Yeah. And I still have people who I remember like I was stop. And I remember during COVID, I stopped for about 6 months, but
oh wow.
I just kept going because I thought this is what I could feel it like on a soul level. I remember talking to some,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I remember just talking to some people that I know through a fellow kind of local group. And I was talking to them like, man, I've been doing at this for years. And like, I just want a job. And if I can get a job, then it'll change my financials and I'll be able to give my family the life that I want and, all this stuff. And they told me something that really kind of like changed my mindset on it. They were saying like working for the benefit of a greater good, something more than yourself, the benefit of others, that's the motivating factor. And the side effect of that is getting a job. I was like, oh, all right, I just got to keep pushing on.
Yeah.
Because like career changers, we're motivated by something more than a lot of times more than just, oh, I just want a new job. Like we've got families to support. We have like our like on like a deep level, something that really
you need a big
do something that motivates. Yeah, that gives us a reason to live. Yeah,
and this is what I keep trying to tell people, that you'll probably get started because you're unhappy at your work, you want more money, you're frustrated. Well, that'll get you started. But what'll make you see it through to completion is a much bigger why than any of those things, because you're going to give up 100 times along the way if those are your reasons and those are your only reasons. But if you've got a bigger why, you will keep coming back to it. Like even if you take a 6-month break, you will keep coming back to it. You can't get it out of your system. So, okay. So it took you a fair chunk of time so that we can help others learn from our mistakes. I would have done a lot of things differently myself. Looking back, what would you have done differently?
I would not do. I would reach out for help. I would get in touch with people, ask as many questions as I could. I'd go to tech meetups. I didn't do any of that because number one,
yeah, for sure.
for fear was short of it. I don't want to go up to someone and say like, hey, I was kind of scared of that for a number of different reasons, but also I feel like LinkedIn wasn't really the thing that it is today. It was a place to kind of put your resume and apply to places and, find out job information. But back then it didn't feel like the place it is now, where you're just encouraged to reach out to people and do coffee chats and all these things. Because I remember like, I didn't have much of a roadmap. Like I found some resources online and things like that, but I didn't know like number one, when my top question all the time was, am I ready? If I could go back in time, I'd probably tell myself much earlier on, you're ready, just start applying.
So let's talk about that for a second, because it's one of the 4 things I tell people we need in a plan is, we need to know where to start. And for that, we need to know you. Because if you're in California, where you start is very different from someone in New York. But if you're both trying to go to Canada, your starting points are different. You need to know the starting point, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Obvious, it's where you start. And the other thing is where you want to end up. And the third is what you need to do in what sequence. Right. Because sequence is important. Mm-hmm. And what you need to do depends. You can only answer that question if you answer the first question is, what's your starting point? Because that's going to dictate what you need to do. And then finally, how much is enough?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's a hard one.
It is hard especially when, everybody has opinions, and their opinions, they always make it seem like they're the end all be all.
Hi, if you want a no BS insight into how to change your career, whether to code or something else, and how to actually get job opportunities in tech, then please subscribe and like. It's no BS because I have zero incentive to mislead you. I just want to help you and give you tons of value so that you will consider working with me to get to your next career. Take a look at the description text below to learn more about the training I offer. But I do post content here regularly, and by subscribing and liking and hitting that notification bell, you will get to know when I post new industry insights for you. You'll also know within about 3 seconds if you want to learn more, but at least you won't miss out. Oh, and please follow me on LinkedIn too. I pretty much post there every single day. Just look for my name, Zubin Pratap. All right, so please like and subscribe to this channel, and let's get back to the episode.
It is hard especially when, everybody has opinions, and their opinions, they always make it seem like they're the end all be all. So you think, okay, I got to learn this framework and this library and this and this and this, and you're just kind of chasing things. So I would look at job description and be like, okay, that's one says that I need to know the MERN stack. So let's go out and learn that. Okay, cool. Build a bunch of things. Okay. That one says I need to learn style of components. Haven't done that. Let's learn that. And I'm just running around. By the time I actually break into the industry, I've never used any of it.
No, you have, and I do this again in weeks 3 and 4 of the program. We talk about this. We get the students to do their own analysis of what their plan should be like, and it's exactly what you say. It's a little bit of everything and almost nothing deep on anything. Mm-hmm. Most of it is not foundational, and most of it is taken on the basis of job descriptions that are often written by non-technical people who are throwing everything in the kitchen sink into the job description in the hope of fishing for a unicorn. And the advice is, well, exactly as you said, it's actually opinions. There's tons of opinions on the internet. And I have one question to my students. When you received that opinion, did they know you existed?
Yeah.
Right? No. Then how is it advice?
Yeah. A lot of it is so ego driven. They want to be right. They want to be right about everything. There are some frameworks out there that are a whole lot better than others, but not every company uses every framework. There's a lot of legacy stacks out there that use frameworks that are only used at that company,
at that company. Yeah, 100%. And also the context, the environmental enablement, the psychology of the individual, all of that is so unique to the person that anytime somebody says, hey, how do I become a coder? I'm like, that's kind of like asking me which way to Portugal.
Right.
It's a really big country. You don't want to go to most of Portugal. Maybe you just want to go to Lisbon or one of the other places that's attractive. But also, for me, it's kind of north and east or north and west. For you, it's kind of east. For someone in London, it's south. Unless I know your starting point, how do I give you a roadmap?
Right.
And I need to really know you to give you a meaningful roadmap. I can give you a bunch of generic crap, but to be honest, just ask Google. It's the same thing. So, and this is what trips people up so much, because they go by these roadmaps and plans and other people's experiences, and no two people have the exact same goals or the exact same starting point or the exact same life circumstances. So, how are you going to do? It's not like you're baking bread.
Yeah, right. And you end up thinking that that's the only thing that's out there. Like I was so I had tunnel vision with JavaScript and just didn't think about anything else. And then my mindset or my mental framework was purely JavaScript. And then once I started getting into other things, or just kind of learning more about what else was out there, I was like, nah, I just really limited myself by just thinking solely within, JavaScript and just thinking I have to follow this JavaScript centric roadmap, whereas someone might be interested in a different language.
So I call these the years in the wilderness. I went through it for 5 years. You went through it for almost the same period of time. Like a half a decade is a long time in our lives, man. Like it's a long time, especially with you've got kids and like that emotional toll and that pressure starts to rack up. So what I guess the question is, given how hard it is to go through the wilderness on your own, what impact does playing this constant guessing game, this build my career through guesswork approach, which is what I did for a long time as well, what impact does that have in your confidence and your momentum?
If I think back on myself back then, it kind of felt like you're kind of perpetually in uncharted waters and you're just looking for an island out there, somewhere to kind of like to some kind of North Star, something to guide you, and you don't really have anything. And it creates a lot of frustration. It starts to feel futile. Like, is this really the right way for me to go? I mean, for me, I felt like that quite a few times. And fortunately, I learned the value of shutting my laptop and walking outside for a little bit and then coming back to it.
The ultimate debugging tool as well.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it can be really draining. And, having someone that can one thing I learned having a mentor is that through my first role, they're there to help you with not only with, and this is for the really good mentors, they help you not just with, programming concepts and all sorts of things like that. They can really connect with you on a personal level for when those times when it comes, you got a PR review or you just get a bunch of PR and that just breaks you. Yeah. And you need someone to help you just get you through that. And I wish I had someone like that when I just first started, because some of those times really did break me, where I thought I know this is what I want to do, but it's been taking how long now? And I still haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
So having someone like a really professional person is good to have.
I will say, Jeremy, you're absolutely right. Spot on. Because, for those people who haven't been around long enough, LinkedIn was different 10, 8, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It's changed now. And because everyone is giving this advice of reach out for coffee chats, I reckon it's gotten to a point where people aren't responding to that anymore, because so many people followed that playbook that it really got. I mean, I can tell you that there was a point when I was getting, several hundred requests per month, right? And that's not sustainable for anybody, And so these kind of ideas that everyone starts to follow very quickly saturate and decline.
Yeah.
Right. But there are some core principles. How do you build relationships? How do you build credibility in the market? Because people think, it's just about the networking, and networking is the people I know. It's not. It's networking is how many people know you and trust you. It's a vastly different thing from how many people you know. It's not a vanity metric. And if you want to use it professionally, they've got to trust you. So can I ask you a really hard question?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Looking back, if you had the money and you had a learning style that's a bit more traditional, let's say, do you think a bootcamp would have gotten you there faster?
Would it have gotten me there faster? Yes. Would it have resulted in more financial burden for me at that time, especially with the cost of boot camps at that time? Yes.
Yes.
Would it have really helped me? Boot camps at that time actually were already starting to, there were some really good boot camps.
Yeah, but it started to dwindle. 2017, 2018. It started. Yeah. That's
there
why
were still some good ones.
Yeah,
but they were already kind of getting criticized. They were already getting some pushback, and that was part of the reason why I thought I should just maybe go it on my own. And then, but I think the biggest thing is, would I have had the personal growth that I had going it out alone? Yeah, it took me a long time. Could I have done it better? Yeah, but it helped me overcome some really deep, negative self-esteem about my own ability. Because I finally, once I got it, like I proved it to anyone without even getting help from anybody, like I can do this.
And it does wonders for your confidence, because I went through the same thing. That's why actually Jeremy and I call out what we're doing. Brian and I, we call what we're doing the anti-bootcamp, because I've been sort of doing it for 3 or 4 years, and then Brian and I combined to bring our 2 programs together. And it's because the fundamental hypothesis is bootcamps had a moment in time because they filled a need at a time where pretty much anyone could get a job if they knew a little bit of code. But that world's gone because the market has matured. And now what people need to be is they actually need to be really quite good to get a job, right? Which is true of every industry. It happened in the law when I was there. You go through a phase where the barriers to entry are low, the bar is low, and then to balance demand and supply, the bar has to be raised every year. I see this, you see this at Apple, I saw this at Google. The interviewing was different 20 years ago from it is now. It's much more sophisticated. It's a machine, right? And so along with that, if the market is changing and the economic dynamics are changing, the candidate has to evolve their strategy. The game's quite different. And so that's why we call it the anti-bootcamp, is because we truly, truly believe there is no point trying to learn to code if the individual isn't a certain kind of person. Right. So we don't coach the subjects, we coach the person. Right. So it's very much a mentorship thing around that. Now, the hard thing with that, though, is that people don't want to put in the time anymore. They want the instant results. So with all that in mind, given you put in enormous amounts of time, enormous amounts of sacrifice, you took the long road and the high road. And, yes, you've become a certain kind of person because of it, and that's invaluable. What would your advice be to people who aren't in that position or do not have the ability to do what you did, which is really go rough it out, for a very long time? Most people can't do that. And no shade on them, but it's a fact, either circumstantially they can't or emotionally they can't. For those sort of people, what do you think they need to focus on so that they can unlock themselves?
I mean, I think you spoke to it earlier when you said the first 2 months of your program that you and Brian do is not even anything coding related. And that speaks to how mentorship is kind of so important to what you guys do. I've spoken to Brian on a number of occasions. I've spoken to a lot of people within Parsity, and you can tell that they have a real kind of quality of character that I'm sure a lot of it comes from, what you all do, but having a mentor, someone to guide you along, to encourage you, to believe in you is one of the most powerful things. Once I had, one thing I realized, and you hear this sometimes from people online, but you got to find the right opportunity, the person to believe in you, that person that tells you, yes, join. And, I didn't have a mentor. So having my boss in that old company just take a chance on me and bring me onto the team and kind of always give me, just no matter how long I needed, just always kind of guide me along was just so critical to my career. I mean, I remember, because I never had anybody like that, when he scheduled one-on-ones with me and the rest of the team, everyone was like, I'll do it once a week, or I'll do it every other week. I was like, how many times can you do? Three times a week. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'd have a list of questions every single time, just about everything. And the knowledge and the just
huge. It's osmosis.
Everything. Yeah. And you don't get that if you go it alone.
No, you don't.
You don't get that through coffee chats. You don't get that through the old school style of boot camp. You get it from working often with someone who believes in you, who has a lot of experience and knows how to really guide you to life-changing kind of results. And that's what I had in my old mentor. But it's something that I would have never had when I was going it alone.
Yeah, and it is genuinely life-changing. I've had that benefit too, which is what sort of influenced me to get into coaching many years ago. This is before I was even an engineer. And the right person who spends the time to understand you and who will then hold the mirror up and say, look, Zubin, you can do this, but this is why you're going to struggle. This is why you may fail. And it's have that hard conversation and say, the problem is kind of you. It's not the topic, because, hey, JavaScript is JavaScript no matter who writes it,
Right. Yeah.
But there's a lot of non-deterministic outcomes that come from the individual, and they need to take responsibility for that. So I've had people mentor me like that in my career. It's been life-changing. And even now with our students, we'll get emails, and they're getting interviews and then they're choking, right? But that's evidence that, hey, you've gotten good enough to get interviews. Now there's another mountain you need to climb. There's another mountain you need to climb, and we need to unblock them and stuff like that. We need to coach them. We need to get them to practice. We need to get them to reframe their beliefs. We need to get them to understand what the hiring manager is looking for, and how that actually is something they can help with, in which case, if you feel confident you can help, you're less likely to choke, but you need to know how you can help, and that's a conversation. So these things are you can't have blogs and textbooks about them, man. Like, you can't have a coding course that covers this. You have to address the person. You have to address the individual. So, so were you going to say something? I feel like I may have cut you off.
At this point, I don't remember.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's totally fine. So last question for you, because I know you've got a very good take on this about, and I'll try and compress it so that, we can ask the question directly. If I understand your analysis of how projects are important, it's because you form an emotional connection to them that'll keep you driving through and driven through the entire process of creating the a personal project. And it doesn't have to be a million projects in your portfolio. That's all very shallow. One or two good ones that you're emotionally connected to will keep you going. Is that a fair summary of your thesis on the role of projects and an emotional connection to the project you're building, or have I missed something?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that was another thing that I struggled with. Of course, a lot of people who are going it alone go into these tutorial hells, right? Where they do endless amounts of tutorials. They have these cookie cutter projects, but they still get stuck.
No, and and they don't learn the important parts, and they follow along, which is what decisions were made and discarded and why.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's the paths not taken on the tree that are actually where all the learning happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I did was I used those projects to build something unique. Those kind of became a foundation for something bigger. So like, I remember taking a MERN stack, like a social network tutorial. And I did that. And then I did it again, but I just kind of used it as a foundation for this martial arts school in New Jersey, where the teacher could upload videos, kind of build a course around it, kind of monitor their progress, kind of all this stuff. But it was the foundation from that original tutorial. And I did some other stuff. I took a simple weather API, and I was like, oh, okay, this is how you do API calls. And I somehow took that and went and kind of turned it into this tool to search 3 different Japanese English dictionaries. I don't know, something like. And then I did a couple things for work too in Python, like kind of with that momentum, like, okay, I can do these things that are totally me. Let's just go out there and start from scratch.
And that's the trick, I think, is you've got to figure out something that you're interested in solving, and then borrow the patterns from tutorials that you've done. You sort of understand the basic primitives of what needs to be broken down, or you don't, and you struggle for a while and then figure it out. And that's the learning. Yeah. But in the age of AI, right, Jeremy, this is the bit that I think the current generation of engineers need to talk about. In the age of AI, where the darn thing is just auto-completing everything for you.
Yeah.
Right? What would your advice be to someone building a project when they think that AI is going to do it for them? And it probably can. What's your advice for them?
Yeah, this is a question that I haven't been able to answer very, very well. So, and this kind of like, when people hear this, they kind of get taken aback a bit. I don't use any like auto completion tools. I ask ChatGPT questions sometimes, especially when I was doing some iOS development recently. I would ask it how do I do this? And it would give me some example, and then I just kind of do it on my own. But in terms of like my typical, JavaScript development, I don't use anything. I have seen some before, and they gave me the responses that I wanted, but it just didn't feel like it kind of fit in with the way my team coded. And I know that like with Cursor, you can kind of add all these different options to kind of like get your style, like the team style, all these different things. But when it comes down to it, like, I just feel like I've worked so hard to get here that I don't want AI to start doing it for me, and then I just kind of forget everything. Like,
I totally understand. I
feel like there's still power in being able to do it yourself. Like, is it going to take longer? Yeah. Is it cool to like vibe code some side projects and see what you can come up with? Cool. But like when you're working, sometimes like in my previous company, this was when Copilot came out. They didn't pay for us. They didn't give us a Copilot subscription. I'm not going to pay for that out of pocket. Like, I already have enough expenses as it is. So, sometimes you're also not allowed to use it at the place of work if they have some very strict requirements.
They have data privacy and sovereignty requirements. But imagine all of this was happening 6 years ago when you were still trying to, tough it out and learn.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? Imagine that, Jeremy. What do you think AI would have done to your learning?
So if I think about that, and if I kind of like equate it to my own experience, if I think back on when I first got my first role, did my first PR, and it was just completely torn apart, I was at least able to answer why I did those things.
Yes.
And like, if I got a question about it, I would get in touch with the person and say, hey, can you go over that feedback with me? Yeah. And some of like the other people on my team, it would just be like this endless slog, and like I just feel destroyed by the end. but it eventually, all those things really helped me because I had to start implementing those things on my own. Like, all right, if I'm gonna get these approvals, I got to do it this way, and I'm gonna learn why I need to do it this way. Yeah. If I was just like vibe coding or just using Cursor or autocomplete to just kind of do it all for me, and then I submitted it, and then I get those comments coming in, I don't know. I feel like that would just like on a really fundamental level, just like I'd feel totally called out and probably just 100%. Just feel like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, and I as part of my job, because I do more DevRel engineering these days than core product engineering, I have to learn new things all the time, right? Because I'm never on one thing for very long, and so in that I'm literally having to pull out my old playbooks on how to learn things fast from 7 years ago, right? Because I'm no longer spending a year on one piece of the code base or one aspect. It's not happening. Sometimes it's 3-4 projects a quarter, right? Completely new. You have to learn from scratch. And so, and especially in the blockchain space where everything moves so damn fast. So I look at the AI stuff and I'm like, man, you can help me be productive. There's no doubt about it. But I have two problems now. If something goes wrong, I can't explain it. That's problem one. Two, if something goes wrong, I probably can't fix it without spending a great deal of time doing the learning that I should have done in the first place anyway. Right. All I've done is kick the can down the road and potentially embarrass myself. Right. And so I've just turned off all this agent mode stuff. I will use it to answer questions to help me learn, but I am in control. And I pick and choose every piece of the puzzle, and I manually copy and paste it. Sure, I'm not typing every keystroke in anymore, but I'm only copying and pasting stuff that I understand. And that way it's becoming an effective learning tool in that it's saving me research time, but it's not skipping on the hard understanding part,
I, for me, kind of starting iOS development about back in September, I used it a lot because I was doing a lot of like Googling and going through documentation, but it was taking a long time and not really finding what I need. It was, we were using this framework that their documentation isn't very good and there's just not a lot of materials out there. But ChatGPT was really good for kind of synthesizing all that into a way that was easy to use. But it then didn't tell me like, okay, here's how to do it. It will give me examples and then I'm like, okay, let me try this. Let me keep trying these things until something works. And then that kind of solidified it in me.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, like, sometimes when I first started, I'd see my coworkers just do these, they would solve things instantly. Like, man, how are you so good at this? Like, I feel like I don't know anything. And they would just tell me like a lot of it just comes with time sometimes.
It comes with time.
And now I get it. Like you think you have to know everything. It's not possible. But the more you do it, the more it kind of becomes natural. And I think with AI, the opposite happens where the more you rely on AI, that's what becomes natural. And you kind of
lose that muscle. You totally. And
yeah.
There's an irony here, right, Jeremy? How does machine learning happen? It happens through billions of trial and error loops on the training data. Billions. That's how learning happens. Not just for the machine, for human beings too. Your kids, me, all of us. We trial and error until we understand and we get better, and then it looks like magic. Right? But it's just trial and error. It looks like magic in the AI. It looks like magic in the human being, but it's the same process. But if you take away the trial and error loops, you end up having output without the magic, without the understanding, without the intuition. And I think that's a very, very dangerous thing for complicated things. I would not, even now, autopilot software in planes has been around for what, almost 60 years or something, 50 years. Like, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
They still need a pilot in the plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Doesn't matter how it can land better than a human being, but there still has to be a human being in the plane to override things.
Yeah.
And that human being has to be trained on operating the plane without the software intact.
Yeah.
Right. I believe there's a reason why they call it Copilot, right? Right. GitHub and Microsoft call it Copilot. It's meant to be it's meant to be with you, part of your team. You're in charge.
Right.
And if you're not in charge doing the AI stuff and you're just vibe coding without knowing what the hell's going on, sure, you'll get some janky app up, but God help you when you have to. I did this last week, and I tried out the agent mode again to see if it's improved. And I spent about 6 hours debugging it. Sure, it took me 20 minutes to write it, but it took me 6 hours to debug. Had I actually done it myself, it would have taken me about the same amount of time, and my learning of my own app would have been higher. My intuition around my own app and the data flows would have been higher. So, I think young developers today or junior developers today have a very difficult choice.
And to your point about pilots, if you want to get a pilot's license, it takes hundreds of hours. And then when you still get up there, like, my wife talks about this all the time, like, oh, that pilot landed the aircraft really well. Some pilots can land it really well. They stick to landing. Others, it's like, you can feel the plane just bouncing. And, that's in the pilot's hands, And so you can still have autopilot, but you still got to be skilled in
hands on the wheel.
Yeah. Hands on the wheel. Yeah.
Hands on the wheel. Exactly. I love the way that looped around, man. Look, thank you so much for your time, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Super fascinating conversation. We've gone longer than we usually do, but that I blame you because you're an interesting guy. You're very thoughtful.
I appreciate it.
You're very thoughtful in your responses. You're very reflective. You dig deep. You're not quick to answer glibly. And I really appreciate that. That makes for a fantastic conversation. I think anybody who's listening to this will get a ton of value around how they need to think, what they need to be, and just how much effort, intensity, and sacrifice this can take for some people. And no two people are going to have the same journey, and that's okay. Everyone has that.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's tough, but it's worth it on so many levels.
Oh, 100%. Exactly as you said, the person you become is the real prize at the end of this, not the salary or the brand or whatever. So congratulations for all your success, man. That's great. Thank you for your generosity in being here. I think your kids are lucky to have you as a dad. And,
oh man, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, there's no manual for that either, but you'll figure stuff out. You know that now. You know that about yourself. So thank you for taking the time. And any last words you'd like to leave with the audience to inspire them, motivate them, or help them be the better person that they want to be?
Just never give up.
Never give up. It's often is that simple. Just refuse to quit. Absolutely.
Yep. Grit and determination and perseverance. It'll take you far. And then once you actually break in, it'll keep taking you farther. So just
that's right. And things always take longer than we secretly hope. That patience is kind of important. They're willing to play the long game. So, all right, wonderful. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
All right.
Do it. Just subscribe. You got to do it.